All right, heroes, it is I, your friendly neighborhood Rabbi John Carrier. Let's see if my microphone is on. That's some top-notch radio, everybody. Welcome to the Jew Curious Show. In this show, we get together with some fun friends. People ask questions about Judaism, about the Jewish people, about Jewish traditions. Whatever question you want to ask a rabbi this morning, I am one. So please dial in to the Jew Curious Show. Whatever questions you have, do we have any holidays coming up? There's Tu B'Shvat, I think. It's kind of just chilling out after Hanukkah. And today, like every Friday, we get together and I answer what questions you have. I play a little bit of video games. That's why we call it Fun Friday, because I have a little fun doing that. And I don't know how much fun it is watching me play video games, but if you ever wanted to see a rabbi be bad at video games before on the internet, I believe there's no other place for you to make that happen. So thank you for joining us. Whatever questions you have, we are on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch TV, my favorite platform. Feel free to jump into the chat, type your questions into the chat or the comments, whatever platform you're watching. I can see all of those questions and comments, and we'll answer them tout suite. And sometimes, first I'll say, if you have a question, make sure you put some question marks around it. It makes it easier to spot. And if I miss your question, because the chat just gets hot and heavy, please feel free to copy that question and paste it back in and ask it again. And my goal is to make sure we answer all your questions today here on the Jew Curious Show. So we're going to take a brief musical interlude, and I will be right back. Welcome back to the Jew Curious Show. It is I, your friendly neighborhood Rabbi John Carrier, and I'm here coming to you live from Southern California. This is something we do every Friday morning, where you are my like to catch the lunchtime crowd on the East Coast. So every Friday, approximately 9 a.m. Pacific time, Eastern time. Today, fumbling a little bit with my cables, and I was so excited. I was so excited because, let's see, is the music on? Turn the music down. Okay, shalom everybody. So turn the music down. I was so excited because there's a game that I've really been wanting to play with you guys called The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And heretofore it was only available by walking into a physical store and buying a copy of that game and putting it onto my system. I love GameStop. I think that's the store where it's at. I love going to the local GameStop. It's a lot of fun. It happens to be in the shopping center that I hate the most. And I don't use the word hate lightly, but this shopping center, from a traffic and parking perspective, I'm talking to you, Empire Center in Burbank. I know you don't watch live streams of rabbis because you're a shopping center, and that's ridiculous. But you know what you did. I was thinking, I don't want to go to this place and buy this game, and now it's available for download, and I'm like, yes, the show's about to start. We're going to download this, and I see that it takes about an hour and a half to download, and it fills up my bandwidth so much that I can't do the show. So we're going to continue with a game that we played last week, which I am much, much better at now than I was last week. This is your favorite and mine, the Untitled Goose game. So last week we started playing this game. I spent about an hour trying to figure out what the in the blazes I was supposed to do, and now I'm actually pretty good at it. So in just a moment we're going to have a good time with our friend the Untitled Goose. Already glad to see Nawa64 is in the house. Nice to see you, Natalie. Says Shabbat Shalom, y'all. Lee Tai Rio says Shalom, everyone. Nice to see you here as well. Let's see if we have some friends joining us over on YouTube and Facebook. Say John Vaughn says hi, everyone. Hi, John Vaughn. Good to see you here. Dakota Black coming in with the Hebrew, typing in Hebrew on in the YouTube chat. Shalom, Boker Tov. Boker or Dakota Black. Nice to see you here. Christy says, Shabbat Shalom from San Bernardino. Nice to see you back here, Christy. Got some old friends and new. Let's see who else is here. We got Christy. Lee Tyreo is here on the Twitch. John Vaughn and Christy are coming in through YouTube. Not seeing any Facebook friends yet, but we'll be happy to see you when we see you. So thank you for coming in. Feel free to, if this is your first time here, say, hey, it's my first time here. Sometimes I recognize people, sometimes I don't. And certainly let us know where you're coming in from. That's kind of cool too, because most times we get together, we are coast to coast and international, y'all. So let's see. I forget, we had somebody coming in from an exotic location last time. Copenhagen, Denmark, which was, I'd like to say Copenhagen. Makes me sound well-traveled. So getting started just a second. Tony Rayner says, want to become famous? Buy followers, primes, and viewers on followonbot.com. Okay. Maybe I will some other time. So let's see. That's your one chance. And then the band hammer comes down. Dakota Back says, from the exotic locale of Missouri. Is that the show me state? I think it is. I had a boss who used to say he wouldn't take your word for it. You had to demonstrate whatever you were doing. It wasn't a lack of trust. It's just he wanted to be able to know that you knew how to do your math there. And so he would say, if he wanted you to demonstrate something, he said, well, I'm from Missouri, so that you have to show me. So I hope I got that right. Dakota Black says, never say that in a schwitz. Thank you very much. If you're not familiar, schwitz is a Yiddish word which means like a sauna. So because you're schwitzing, you're sweating. And so never say you got to show me when you're in a sauna. So thank you for that. So here, let's see. Gonna go back to just checking all my different things here. So we're back in the Twitch panel. Let's see. I'm gonna turn off I'm gonna go ahead and ban Tony Rayner for spamming my thingamabob. And ban user. Okay, cool. So done that. This is I work. I love everybody who shows up, who says hello. If you're gonna spam the chat, I got to shut you down because I want to keep. This has been a great discovery for me. This live streaming thing, especially with the Jew Curious community, because I have to. Sometimes the internet is a dangerous place. Sometimes the internet people are mean on the internet. I don't know if you've met this aspect of the internet, but sometimes people are mean, sometimes people are selling stuff, sometimes people are spammy, and I've been just really overwhelmed with gratitude at how great this community is, that people are here more to ask serious questions, sometimes ask silly questions. It's not all serious here. This is Fun Friday after all, but I've been really overwhelmed with how earnest and sincere and kind and supportive everyone is who shows up in the chat here. So I say that to encourage you to share your questions, to share your story, to say hi, to introduce yourself, because you will not meet a nicer group of people on the internet. I'm not responsible for that. They're responsible for how cool they are. My responsibility is just to referee and bring down the ban hammer when somebody starts shenanigans. So, Nawa64 says, RE shopping centers, nothing is worse than Israeli groceries on Erev Shabbat. There are probably worse things in the world. Strip mining is worse than that, I think. And I say that having spent a good part of my childhood in West Virginia. Strip mines are worse. The fires in Australia, not to joke about that, that's a serious thing. That's worse than an Israeli grocery on Erev Shabbat. But I'm gonna say like number 5 is a kosher grocery store in certain urban neighborhoods right before Shabbat. So I think they it says I meant that in reference to shopping centers. Yeah. So that's like shopping. So there's one place I go. Luckily they close down at 2. So you have like if you go to like an Israeli grocery or kosher grocery store, it can be kind of hectic when people are getting ready for Shabbat. They want to get everything done before the sun goes down, and people are just people really want their orders filled and things like that. There are several cultures in which let's say standing in line and waiting your turn are prevalent, like parts of American culture, certainly English culture, queuing up, people will stand in line politely. Not everybody does that. But I have to say, shopping centers in Southern California, I'll put up right there as well, because it's usually a giant. It's a place full of giant SUVs, each of which has one driver that weighs approximately 100 pounds. And so it's like this little person in a great big car that needs its own space, and people are just lined up and cutting each other off, and it's just bananas. So I think shopping online is a good thing. So that's where I like to do most of my shopping. Lucky Eladiel says, "Shenanigans, shenanigans." Thank you for catching that reference. I call shenanigans on shopping center parking. So let's see. Any questions about Judaism? I'll say if you have a question, might want to put question marks around it. That makes it easier for me to see, or at the end of it, beforehand, if you're speaking in Spanish, a little upside down question mark. That works too. I don't speak Spanish, but I recognize Spanish question marks. Let's see. KG Wilcox says, "Hi all, sorry I'm late." That's cool. I was late too. The SUV thing with the teeny driver is a problem on the East Coast too. Yeah, I get it. It's not just California. Just like in California, it's like at least they're not covered with road salt. Lee Tyrell said, "Yeah, shopping in shopping centers flares my anxiety up too much. I'll stick to shopping online." I'll tell you what, if I can talk like Hank Hill from King of the Hill, who is like my secret alter ego. Just walking around in undershirts with his glasses and his short haircut, not saying nothing. Got to get a haircut today. I'll tell you what, that's what I heard growing up in the Texas dialect. To open an expression of truth sharing. I tell you what. So man, I tell you what. When I first started observing Shabbat, my favorite thing about it was, "Oh, you wanted to go to the mall? Sorry, I can't go to the mall today." Because my family would go to the mall on Saturdays, and that was my least favorite thing to do, mostly because of parking. And so that was a blessing. When I brought Shabbat into my life, I'm like, "Sorry, I can't go do my least favorite thing anymore. Shabbat, rules." So that was a nice thing to enjoy. Let's see. Dakota Black asks, "I was wondering if the Talmud has an exact prescription for the length and color of tzitzit." So, thank you for asking this question. In the Talmud, it talks about in the Torah, when it talks about tzitzit, in the passage from and it's not the V'ahavta, but it's in the section of the Shema, and the three passages around the Shema. First one is V'ahavta, second one's about crops, third one is about tzitzit, and it says you'll tie a thread of blue to the fringe of each corner. In the Talmud, it discusses this thread of blue, where some people had it, some people didn't. Some people said it came from the exact color of blue was more like a violet color, and it came from a particular snail called a chilazon that's discussed in the Talmud that is now extinct, and so that's why. For the most part, you don't. Sometimes in certain places, if people really want to, go buck wild over it, you'll see people with a thread of blue wrapped through their tzitzit, because they're trying to fulfill that commandment in a very literal way. That when you have the tzitzit, those sort of dangly tassel fringes at the corners of garments, some people will have a thread of blue going through there to fulfill that commandment as they see it from the Torah. There's another opinion that that particular shade of blue that they were talking about came from a dye that was created by a dye that came from an extinct animal, and so because it came from an extinct animal, you were now exempt. And so I'll say the vast majority of tzitzit that you see out there is white, and that is a custom that we have. Could it be other colors? Possibly, but for the most part you see white, right? And length, not so much. I mean, it shouldn't be so long that it drags and gets dirty. And it's not, I had kids tell me, my old synagogue, they said, "Oh, Rabbi, I saw you were wearing your talit, and your fringes were dragging on the ground, and how dare you?" Isn't that a sur min Torah? And so the thing is, if your fringes touch the ground by accident, that's okay. The fringes in themselves, they have a different level of sanctity, but not the kind of kedusha that you can't, let's say, take them into the bathroom. That's a different thing. People often will take off their talit before they go into the bathroom, not because the fringes have that level of holiness, but often because a talit will have a blessing stitched into it that uses the name of God, and so we don't want to take an article of clothing that has like the name of God, even an allusion on it, into the bathroom. So all this is to say, if people are wearing, I know this is kind of far field of your question, all this is to say, if you're wearing a talit katan, that is a talis that some people wear under their clothing, and I do that most of the time. You can wear that into the bathroom if it doesn't have the blessing stitched into it. There are ways to make sure that that when you're in the bathroom, for whatever reason you're in there, you don't get your talit katan, messy. So that is to say that tzitzit don't have the same level of holiness as the blessing that's stitched in. That said, they do have a certain amount of kedusha to them. The idea is that if your tzitzit get worn out, if one of the threads breaks, that makes if you get a thread that's kind of in the loop that attaches to the garment, if one of those things break, the tzitzit are no longer kosher, or rather wearing them no longer fills the commandment you would wear them for. And so it's said, like, when that happens, we do give them a certain amount of respect, that you don't just cut that off and throw it in the garbage with the rest of your coffee grounds and potato peels and whatever's in your garbage. I don't judge you. You maybe use it for another purpose. A friend of mine who taught me how to tie all the knots of the tzitzit. Like, you just buy these talitot and they have them on there. I got curious one time about how to tie them myself. Got the right threads, watched the right YouTube videos, got into a whole thing of like replacing all of my tzitzit by hand. But he showed me, like, let's say if you're taking one that's messed up, can't use it anymore, you don't just throw that in the trash. But what he does is he will take, a tzitzit and use it as like a bookmark for a holy book. Like if he's has a book that's got that's the Tanakh, or Mishnah or something like that. He had a few discarded tzitzit that he would use as like bookmarks for holy books. So let's see. We got people sharing in. K Dixie says hi from California. Good to see you, K Dixie. In the house, D. Alexon says Boker Tov L'Kulam, Boker Or. D. Alexon, I saw some good questions. I just want to say hi to people who are showing up. So the exact length, not so much. There is a minimum size for a talit. That is the garment that holds the tzitzit. It should be, I forget the exact dimensions, but you can look it up. Just Google, minimum size talit. You see some people wearing stoles. You see some people looking like, big bedsheet talitot. I like the big kind, so I'm really kind of surrounded by it myself. I'm sort of a big dude if I don't look that way on camera. But there is a minimum size. It has to qualify as a garment, right? So that it has to be, a quadrilateral. It has to be a four-pointed thing that has corners of 90 degrees. So it has to be rectangular. There's a minimum size of that. I'd say it's tzitzit length. Like look at the people in your community. Look at the people that you see or admire or want to model, and you'll see how long they are. So let's see. Nawa64 says, apparently the techelet snail from which the blue dye originates has returned in the past 5 or 10 years. Maybe since we stopped harvesting them for blue dye, they've made a comeback. That's good to hear. Let's see. Triggers and Viv is in the house. Says Shabbat Shalom. Hi, Trig. Nice to see you. D. Lexon's there. Venus Black, is the official opinion that using the bathroom is unholy? No. It's not that it's unholy. I mean, we don't have this same body-soul dualism as you might say in other religions. And that reminds me, there's a book recommendation I want to make. I think it's called Here All Along by Sarah Hurwitz, Hurwitz. If anybody wants to look that up on Amazon and throw a link into the chat, I'd be much obliged. So Sarah Hurwitz wrote this great book called Here All Along. This was a person who, grew up, Jewish parents, had a bat mitzvah, but then kind of shrank back from involvement in Jewish community after that. Had a very continues to have a very successful career. One of her last stops was the official speechwriter for the Obamas. Like, she was working in the President Obama's administration, and then kind of moved, she had done some work for Michelle Obama, and she just felt this sort of greater affinity. She said when she was writing Barack Obama's speeches, she just couldn't get his voice into her head. Like, when she was writing speeches, she couldn't model how he spoke, but felt it really easy to model how Mrs. Obama spoke, Michelle Obama spoke. And so she asked to be sort of switched to like head speechwriter for Michelle Obama. So anyway, very accomplished young person in a very high stress position, but was also sort of seeking something, and sort of worked her way back into understanding Jewish tradition, understanding the Jewish community, and trying on different Jewish spiritual practices. And that's sort of the essence of the title of the book, Here All Along. She was looking for something, and she found that Judaism had been here all along. And so this book is, I've just been reading it over the last couple of weeks based on a friend recommending it, is, I will say, I'm going to take a stand. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say it's the best contemporary book for sort of explaining on a very 101 level, like a very broad swath of Judaism, for people who are smart people, but are Jew. It's my Jew curious pick of the month. Let's put it that way. It does a really good job of explaining Judaism to smart people who maybe don't understand why Jews do the things that we do, especially sort of Jewish intellectual people who were raised who were sort of see themselves as secular Jews, don't understand what all the fuss is about with all the holidays, don't understand Jewish ideas of God, think it's not for them, but feel like this piece missing in their life, and they want to know, okay, so what's Judaism have to offer? And Sarah Hurwitz lays all that out. I don't know if I'm giving a fair description of her project in this book. I'm still reading it myself. But the book that did that for me was Herman Wouk's Here Is My God. This Is My God. That's who it said, you not here. This Is My God. So when I was first learning about Judaism, my kind of introduction to Judaism class that I took, and I say class loosely, it was like two couples and the rabbi in his study. It was more like a book club. And the two books that he recommended to me, actually I'll say three books that he recommended to me, which I still recommend to people. Rabbi Brad Artson's It's a Mitzvah, I think, is a great explanation of Jewish traditions and why we do them. And also resources on how to follow up. It's a little dated, like some of the resources, like if you're interested for further reading, join this mailing list of like physical people send you things in envelopes. So that tells you how old it is. But the philosophy and his writing are timeless. Just some of the recipes and some of the recommended readings are a little bit out of date. But that's a great book. Rabbi Michael Strassfeld's Guide to the Jewish Holidays is a good book, and Herman Wouk. So he was this novelist, wrote Exodus, wrote some incredible novels, but also decided to write a book about Judaism for his kind of skeptical secular friends who thought that they were too smart to believe in all that religious hokum. And so he sat down and he wrote a book. He's like, okay, look, I'm in this same literary smart set. This is what I get out of it. This is what it means to me, and gives a great overview of Judaism. I believe, and I still recommend it. It's a great book. I think for this generation, for this decade that we're in, that we just started or haven't started yet, depending on your stance on that, Sarah Hurwitz's book, Here All Along, fits that mold. I think that sort of, I won't say it's superseded it, but I think if you're looking for that kind of book, the best contemporary book is Sarah Hurwitz's Here All Along. Why did I start talking about that? We were talking about going to the bathroom. Okay, yes. So she calls out, and I just, because I've heard this all along, but she says this very succinctly, there are other religions that separate the body and the, let's see, it says, your Malowitz says, unfortunately, It's a Mitzvah is not available as an ebook. That's true. I don't think it's been transported over to Kindle. I'm listening to Sarah Hurwitz's book on Audible. That's how I get so much of my reading done, because I have a pretty long commute that I have to make sometimes multiple times a day. So I get a lot of reading done that way. But she points out that there are other religions that say that the body is evil, the soul is pure, and the more you can focus on the soul and, pull back from bodily things, the higher level of holiness you reach. In Judaism, there is a recognition that the body and the soul are distinct. However, they need each other. My very first podcast, The Wisdom Community, I started off with this sort of short audio essay I wrote called Two Gifts. And I don't know, you might still be able to find that on Apple Podcasts someplace. And the idea is that when we're born, we're given two gifts. We're given a soul that's made out of the stuff of heaven, and we're given a body that's made out of the stuff of earth, stuff, matter. And, it's the soul that makes us holy, but it's the body that's needed to do mitzvot, right? A soul can't do mitzvahs by itself. Like a soul can't go out, if you're just like a floating soul, you can't help the poor, you can't, fight for people who need fighting for, you can't bless God if you have no throat or tongue. Those things are made out of meat. Not to be too graphic, but it's the body that lets us do holiness, right? It's the body that lets us create things in the world and continue with the co-creation of the world as partners of God. And so the body itself is said from Genesis to be, we are created in the image of God, right? This sack of meat that lets us down more often than not, right? Is a holy thing. That's why we try to take good care of it. It's a mitzvah to take care of your body. It's a mitzvah to eat right, to get some exercise, to make sure your heart is healthy and strong. It's a mitzvah to take care of your health and not do things intentionally that would harm you. It's a mitzvah to quit smoking. So we don't scarify the body in unnecessary ways. I mean, that's many people say that's part of the reason why we don't tattoo, right? There's another description in the Torah that we don't tattoo in memory of the dead, because that's sort of explained that's a practice of pagan cultures, but it's also kind of permanently altering those, this gift that's a holy thing. That includes going to the bathroom. There's even a blessing, called, so the short name for it is Asher Yatzar, meaning we bless God who created human bodies, and people who are very punctilious about saying all the blessings they're supposed to say a blessing after they go to the bathroom, right? And we bless God who fashioned the human body with great intricacy and wisdom, and we acknowledge that it's a long blessing. And sometimes when you go to like day schools and stuff, it'll have it on a placard right outside the bathroom. You don't put it in the bathroom because, again, it sort of invokes the name of God. You put it outside the bathroom, so you say it as soon as you leave the bathroom. I bless God who created this intricate human body, because if with openings that open and closings that close, because of any of those things that were out of whack, like if something that's supposed to be open was closed, or something that's supposed to be closed was open, it's impossible to survive. And if I can't survive, I can't do mitzvot. As it says in Hallel in the Psalms, the dead can't praise God. And so the body and what the body does is holy. That said, once it leaves the body, we don't like hanging around it. The idea is that there are certain things you shouldn't do in the bathroom, aside from just things that practical things you decide. Probably don't want to sit in there and eat a sandwich. And you don't take holy books into the bathroom. It's not because going to the bathroom is unholy. It's because we shouldn't be reading. I'm just going to get real with you all. You shouldn't be reading holy texts in a place where there are foul smells, right? Because then you might associate in your mind foulness or smelly stuff with stuff that you're supposed to elevate. So that's a very long answer to a very short question. Uh, so it was a really great question. I forget who asked that question. If it was Dakota Black. Now let's see. Anyway, I'm just looking up here. Ruthie Dolls checking in from the East Coast. Good to see you, Ruthie. Let's see. Naya Shah. Oh, there she is. Good afternoon from the East Coast. I've been following Naya Shashi. I've been following your vegan adventures. The food pictures you've been posting. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. So thank you for sharing that stuff. K Dix. So somebody was asking. Okay, official opinion: using the bathroom is unholy. So Venus Black. Thank you for asking that question. Using the bathroom is not unholy. So please, if you're trying to be holy, don't hold it in. That could hurt your body and make you cross, as my mother would say. And then you'll just be mean to people, and that's not holy. So using the bathroom is not unholy. In fact, we can say a blessing after we use the bathroom. It's just once you've used the bathroom, if just don't read Torah in there. So flush it down, turn the fan on. Make it nice for the next person who uses it, and go read your Torah someplace else. There is commandments or instructions in the Mishnah. Don't engage in Torah study in places that are foul, and that says specifically in the presence of feces. And this is coming from a time where we didn't have the wonderful indoor plumbing that we have now, right? There's even a rabbinic story. There's a story in the Talmud about this senior rabbi who goes to the outhouse and has a student who's peeking in at the little. I'm picturing these TV outhouses with the little moon cut out, and one of his students is peeking in on him while he's going to the bathroom, and the guy's like, "What are you doing? Don't do that." That's very impolite. And the student says to him, "But this too is Torah, and I must learn it." Right? Meaning that not that I don't even want to say it. Not that what he was. The idea is that how one conducts oneself at all times is connected to Torah. There's no activity of human life that can't be informed by Torah study, elevated by blessings. Even going to the bathroom, they said, here's a specific way that you should do that, and here's the blessing you should say afterwards. And so it's got a kind of holiness. It's the natural operation of the human bodies. In fact, I had a wonderful teacher, I'll just name by name, Rabbi Pat Fenton, who, sometimes we'd be in Talmud class, and maybe it was right after lunch or something, and someone would pass gas audibly in class, accidentally. And I've never seen somebody so gracious about it. When that happened, she would say, "Isn't it wonderful that God blessed us with human bodies that function?" And that made an outsized impression on me. That she took that accident that was probably embarrassing for someone, and not only elevated it by calling out the holiness of human bodies, but also quelled that student's embarrassment in that moment. So which is a holy act in itself. So Trigger says, "Love the shirt, Rabbi. Thanks. I just grabbed it. It's my thing for these things. I like to wear black t-shirts, and some of my black t-shirts have dreidels on them. Some of them have Metallica on them. This one happens to have the Batman." So K. Dixie says, "So if the fringe is frayed, can it be repaired, or is it time to retire it?" So it can be a little frayed, and that's okay. If it's frayed on the ends. If the threads within the knot get frayed, that's okay. It's where it becomes, where it needs to be replaced is if, I'm trying to, if I have one right here. Oh, look, show and tell time. This is my Ziegler Talit. I don't know if I want to embarrass my school by putting it on here. I spent 5 years getting this Talit. So I happen to have it here. Let's see. I want to make sure you can see what I'm seeing. If you have it here, so this is a talit. When we're talking about, for anybody who's not familiar, when we're talking about the fringes or the tzitzit, we're talking about this thing. So here's the corner. Here's a special thing with various knots in it. You see this loop right here, and then there's a knot, and then there's a little pattern, and there's a knot, and there's a pattern, etc. And then here's the stuff that hangs down. So just to inform you, if you're curious, if one of these breaks, let's say, God forbid, this thing snaps, breaks right here, it makes me sad, but it's still kosher. You can still use it. If one of these little threads gets nicked, maybe you think about retying it, getting some new ones, but it's still kosher to use. The problem is if one of, let's see, if you see here, here's the corner, and here's the loop that goes from these knots that connects it in there. These threads, if any of these connective threads gets severed, then you need to remove it and get a new one. And you can either go, I don't know if there are tzitzit repair shops out there, in many Jewish bookstores, gift shops, etc., or online, you can buy these wool threads, and there's sort of specially sourced, usually wool threads. You can buy these threads, and they just come in like a bundle of threads, and sometimes with it'll come with a piece of paper that shows you how to tie them, or there are YouTube videos on how to tie them, and then you can tie them yourself, right? And it's going to be a very meditative activity. Sometimes it takes a little while to get it right. It takes a little while to get it so that they come out even. It's just like tying a necktie. It takes practice to do it. But you can retie these yourself, or you can take it to somebody else who knows how to do it to retie it. And that, I hope, answers your question. So if any of these gets frayed or nicked or severed down here, not so bad. If these connective ones get nicked, then you need to remove it and put on a new one. So Woolen Bullet shares, yes, at my show we have hooks for people to place their talit, but what about if you have your talit in your talit bag and you're out in public, not at shul? What are you supposed to do? So that's a good question. If you have a talit bag, it's like it's a matter of, I don't want to take my talit in the bathroom, but I also don't want to leave it out in public where it could get lifted. I feel like if it's in a bag, it's sheltered in a way. It's not like you have direct air contact between a blessing. You should try to organize your life in such a way that you don't have to take your talit bag. But if you've got a talis and it's inside, if you've got a talit, I say talis, talit interchangeably, Ashkenazi, Sephardi pronunciation. If you've got a talit in a talit bag and that's inside a backpack, so there's sort of a double layer of seal around it, and the only way you can reasonably expect your talit not to get stolen, because then you couldn't use it and you couldn't fulfill the mitzvah, is to take it in the bathroom with you. I'll say take it in the bathroom with you. But try not to put yourself in that position. But in a shat harahach, as they say, in like a time of urgency, in order to preserve your talit, double bag it, and then you'll be okay. But try not to do it that often. So, but that's the Jewish law is sort of decided at the fringes, as we say. See what I did there? So let me see what else is in the chat. Got a lot of great people joining us today. Good afternoon from the East Coast. I'm also almost not going to have time to play video games. Let's see. Naya Shashi is here. KG Wilcox, greetings to all. Glad to see everyone. The Three Amigos, it says, are here. Sorry, that was me doing the Three Amigos. Oh, great. KG Wilcox shared the Amazon link to Here All Along by Sarah Hurwitz. That's my book pick of the month. Amazon Smile will make a donation to your favorite charity when you buy anything. That's a nice thing. Somebody I saw made a comment about another book rec that I did. Let's see. For someone apprehensive about doing the physical rituals like bowing at the right times, is there a guide you can direct us to? Is it offensive or not? I'm going to say, I wouldn't worry too much about offending people, because I have this question or a similar question quite a bit. Like, if I go into a shul and I bow at the wrong time, am I going to offend anyone? Or I want to go meet with a rabbi. I've never met with a rabbi before. I'm really worried that I'm going to offend this person. So rabbis and shul, well, I was going to say people at shul aren't easily offended, but I've lived and worked in shuls for long enough that I know that's not true. Human beings are easily offended. They seem to be more easily offended these days than in prior days. But I will say they're not going to be offended by you bowing at the wrong time, right? If you're sitting when everybody else is standing, so that's my advice. So I'll say a couple of things. If you're looking for a good guide to Jewish choreography, a couple of places I would look, or this is where I learned from. There might be better resources out there now. The Art Scroll Siddur, and when you're first learning how to pray, I recommend the Art Scroll Siddur. I don't care for the translation. I don't care for the particular theology behind it, but it's really good on telling you when to stand up and when to sit down and when to bow and how to do it. That was useful for me starting out. Even more useful to me, and this is what I recommend to people, especially if you're worried about offending someone. If nobody sees you, they're not going to get offended, right? So if you're praying at home and you want to know when to bow and when to sit and when to stand and things like that, Art Scroll Siddur is good for that. Another great book is To Pray as a Jew by Chaim Halevi Donin, Donin. Sometimes I've given that book away as part of some fun things that we've done, my starter Jewish library giveaways that I've done. That was an invaluable resource to me to help me understand like the basics and the not so basics of Jewish prayer, including, when and how to put on a talit, when and how to put on tefillin, when to bow. In fact, when I teach the Miller introduction, excuse me, get a little thing in my throat. When I teach the Miller Introduction to Judaism course, I've got another one coming up soon. If you're in the Pasadena area or in the East Valley or East Side, or just don't want to drive to AJU in Mulholland, quick plug, I want to say the 12th of February. It's like the second Wednesday in February. We're starting a new cycle of the Introduction to Judaism class. So if you want to take that class, if you want to take it with me, or just don't, or just the most convenient, you don't care about me, I'll be fine. If you want to take that class, it's starting in February. Go to intro.aju.edu, sign up for the Pasadena/East Valley class. I mention that because there's a whole chapter, there's a whole night we spend on Jewish prayer, and the title of the chapter is "When Do I Bow?" Because that is an FAQ. That is a very frequently asked question. First off, if you bow at the wrong times, you're not going to offend anybody. People might look like, hey, where'd she learn how to bow? That's it. They may offend you. But they're not going to get offended by it. My advice is, if you're in a public place, and that's where you're most worried about offending people, sit toward the back. I usually like to encourage people to sit kind of close and shul, because then I can hear them singing and we sing better together. But if you're not sure about the choreography parts of it, sit, you don't have to sit all the way in the back, but have a few rows of people in front of you and do what they do. When they stand, stand. When they sit, sit. The exception being the mourner's cottage, where you'll just see like a few people stand up. So just, and I don't want to be like your mother teaching you about nonconformity, saying, if your friends jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you do it? No. But in this sense, when you're learning about the embodiment of Jewish prayer, conformity is a good teaching tool. So just watch what most people are doing. When most people stand, you should stand. When most people sit, you should sit. Watch how people bow at various parts of the prayer. We actually have a couple of distinct modes of bowing. There's like just the kind of the simple bow, kind of from the hips, and then there's the deep knee bend bow, where people like go down, they like bend at the knees, and then they bow. And then there's I'll call this the bow supreme, right? Like the extra deluxe bow, where people will bow to the left, bow to the right, bow in the middle, deep knee bend, bow to the middle. So don't get freaked out. That's a lot of details. Just watch what people are doing when they're doing it, and keep coming back to services. And over time, this will just become natural to you. And that for me is the best way of learning how to do it. And if you're, if you're playing along, people aren't going to get offended. People, there are people who've been Jewish their whole life and don't know how to do this stuff. So a lot of people say to me like, "Oh, I don't want to go to the synagogue because the service is in Hebrew and everybody understands it but me." That is almost never true. Like I understand most of the prayers because I've been saying them frequently and for a long time. But I'll say for the first 5 to 10 years I went into synagogues, I had zero idea what was going on. And now that I'm in a place to get to know most of the people in the synagogue, I will tell you most of those people don't speak Hebrew. And if you're in Israel, it might be a little different. Even in Israel, some of the people there might not speak Hebrew. Maybe they're tourists or something. But don't assume that everybody knows everything and you're the only one who doesn't. Everybody is piecing it together just like you are. Everybody started out as a beginner just like you're starting out. Just go, don't have to sit in the back, but sit a few rows back so you can observe and just copy those motions. And over time, you'll get very comfortable with it. And this is especially important, if you have a regular place that you go, do it how they do it in that place. And I say that because I have noticed, as I've been a part of different synagogue communities, that there are certain consistencies and then there are local variations, right? There's the end of the first blessing of the Amidah. Pretty much everybody does that bow the same, right? You bow to the left, right, center, deep knee bend, bow to the center. Just about everybody bows that way at that moment. However, I've noticed there are in Pasadena, for example, there are different places in the service where people bow that people in Burbank didn't, or people in most shuls I've been a part of didn't. And it's just that in Pasadena they bow during certain things, but that's what we call the minhag hamakom. Minhag hamakom means minhag means custom, makom means place. Minhag hamakom is the custom of the place. And the rabbis of the sages of our tradition had a very great respect for the custom of the place, and coined this phrase, minhag hamakom hu kechelchata, which means the custom of the place has the weight of law. And so there are many places that people bow in the service or don't bow. Same with standing and sitting. I noticed when I went from Burbank to Pasadena that there are certain things they stand up for in Burbank that they don't stand up for in Pasadena, and vice versa. And there's one of my friends in Burbank, told me this story of there was a certain congregation, and within this congregation, when it came time to say the Shema, that sort of central prayer in the service, about half the people would stand up, and half the people would sit down. And this person was confused. There's like, why is there half the people stand up and half the people sit down? What's the right way to go? And so, he asked his friend who stands up, and he's like, standing up for the Shema is the way we've always done it. And he asks another friend who sits down for the Shema, and he says, sitting for the Shema, that's just the way we've always done it. And so he finds the oldest person in the synagogue, the person who's been there the longest. And he goes to him, and he says, Bob, we call him Bob, Bob, what's the custom of the place? Half the people are standing and half the people are sitting. And he says, that's the custom of the place. I've been here for 90 years. And for as long as I've been here, half the people stand and half the people sit. And this just goes to show you that different customs develop in different communities. So if you ask me the right way to do something, I could tell you the way I do it. But then you might go into your community and they don't do it that way, and you may feel like either I'm wrong, which I'm perfectly willing to accept, or they're wrong, which I hesitate to suggest. So your mileage may vary, the community that you're a part of may do it differently. So if you want to learn the right way to do it, the right way to do it is the way that the people do it that you pray with most often. So get involved in your community, sit a few rows back at first until you get the hang of things, and you'll just absorb it by osmosis. So long answer to a very short question, but it's a question that I get a lot, so it's very important. Calvin Chavis says, hi from Charlotte, North Carolina. Good to see you. That could be from hours ago. Again, just trying to work it through here. Let's see. Kay Dixie says, if you have no charity chosen, consider PJTC, Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center. That's really nice of you. Thank you. That's where I'm a rabbi right now. Your Malowitz says it's available. Okay, it's a mitzvah is not available. Try the library. You can get it. I know you can get it on Amazon. Stanley Murray says, good morning, Rabbi John. Good morning, Stanley. Nice to see you. Dakota Black says, oh, Rabbi, I read As a Driven Leaf by Milton Steinberg. That's a book that I recommended a month or two ago. Spoiler, it made me ugly cry. So good. Thank you for the recommendation. I'm really glad you enjoyed that book. I don't remember if I ugly cried during it, but man, my heart went out to Acher. I shouldn't call him that. That was like his mean nickname. They called him Acher, the other one. This is his apostate name. Benabuya, had a tough life. And I think about that myself because I spent a lot of my time reading Jewish stuff. Not bragging, just part of my deal. I spent a lot of my time reading not so Jewish stuff. Right now I'm on a jag of going back through some classic novels. I've just recently read Great Gatsby, On the Road, Catch-22, which Catch-22 was one of those that I'd never read before, and now I'm listening to the book on tape of To Kill a Mockingbird. But just somebody on the internet compiled a list of great books you should read or reread, so that's what I'm doing. So I spend a lot of my time in different worlds. The video game streaming world isn't necessarily native to traditional Jewish teaching or observance, but that's where I'm teaching Torah. So and I think we're having a good time. That was the sort of central driving conflict of As a Driven Leaf, is this guy who feels very comfortable in two different worlds, and he's trying to reconcile those two things. And what I took away is he finds that they're not so dissimilar, but there's benefits in life of picking a thing and sticking with it, right? So that you can experiment with all sorts of things, and that's why a lot of people who are Jew curious watching this program, listening to stuff I've done before, they're seekers. They're trying on a few different things, and they have sort of a syncretic approach to religious practice or observance, or they're trying to decide whether I should convert or not, whether I should commit or not. And I have to say, it's a little bit like marriage in a way. That's a metaphor that works for me. It's not for everybody, but I feel like committing to one person. My personal record is 12 and a half years right now. I'm still working on that personal record. Is committing to one person and one relationship and letting that grow and develop and deepen over time has been so much more satisfying for me than dating or sampling. I don't know a less crude way to say it. I'd rather be with one person for a long time than a bunch of people for a short time. I'll put it that way. And that's my metaphor for picking a religion and sticking with it. You can learn a lot about Judaism from books. Brought to mind, there was a famous golfer, I forget what his name was, but he was like a famous golfer, Jack Nicklaus, let's say, who said, I read a lot of books about golf before I realized you can't learn a lot about golf from books. Right? It's like you can study it from the outside, but once you commit and start doing it from the inside, that's where you really start to get the juice out of it. Trouble is, then you're committed. So it's not a bad thing. Let's see what else is going on here. Oh my God, so many great chats. I'm looking for questions. Ezra Seville said, Ezra Seville, haven't seen you here before. I'm really glad to see you here from YouTube. What is Gehenna? I've read Yiddish literature from Shtetl to Haskalah Shift that a Jewish protag may say, the fiery hells of Gehenna. I was wondering if that's osmosis of Christian concepts in this era. Not so much. There is a people often hear the word Gehenna as the Jewish word for hell, and some people say, oh, the great thing about Judaism was we don't have a hell. Sorry, we kind of do, and I'll give a very brief snapshot of that because we've got a lot of questions. But Gehenna appears, the name appears in the Talmud more often as Gehinom. I'm going to guess Gehenna is kind of a Yiddish maybe slang or Yiddish drift from the word Gehinom. I think it comes up in my favorite sugya, my favorite pericope, my favorite part of the Talmud, where it talks about people who go down. It says everybody goes to Gehinnom, which is a kind of purgatory, simply put, sort of a purgative, temporary place. And everybody, when people die, everybody goes down to Gehinnom, but then everybody comes out again, except for three types of people, and then they mention particular sins. So the rabbis acknowledge this idea of a kind of purgatory. Now, this is a speculation. Literally 0 people have ever come back from being dead. There are plenty of people whose hearts have stopped and brain death and then came back and had near-death experiences. I'm not going to discount any of that. But when it comes to definite knowledge of afterlife, literally 0 reliable reports have come back. You may have had a different experience. I'm not knocking your experience, but statistically speaking, we don't know for certain what happens. Some religions have staked a claim that they do know exactly what happens, and they'll explain it to you, and that should be a guide to how you live your life. I believe where the rabbis were coming from was that, okay, logically, we observe that good people suffer in this world, and wicked people prosper in this world, and that seems too unjust for a system created by a God that we trust to be just. And so the speculation was that when people die, their uppance may come, right? They may get a comeuppance. And so the idea that was put forth by many of the sages, and there's no universal one right Jewish way to think about afterlife or death, because we acknowledge that we don't know. There are speculations. There are some Kabbalistic speculations that some people will take as certainty on faith. I'm more skeptical. I'd rather look at all the different traditions, and I'll wait as long as I can to see which one is right. But one notion was this idea of Gehinnom. And Gehinnom was a kind of purgatory that, if you were a flawless person, if you were a true tzaddik, never did anything bad in your life, maybe you immediately are ushered into the world to come, or whatever the good place is. For most of us, we're not, right? So for most of us, there is this kind of temporary purgatory, meaning as in purging, as in you got some schmutz on you got to get rid of. You go and you suffer for a while, and then you're fine. There's a Kabbalistic notion of kaf hakela, which means the cup of the slingshot. And I was listening to a recording of a mystic scholar explain this as in, your soul is purged of its impurities by getting pulled into a slingshot and shot. Not across space, but across time. And you sort of soar through your life, and you see all the things that you did wrong. Or you also see all the decisions that you could have made that would have been good, but you didn't make the right decision. Right? You see all the missed opportunities. And just by reviewing your life in that way, that itself is your purgative. Gehenna is something different. Gehenna, Gehenna, I'm going to say Gehinnom, Gehenna interchangeably. Gehinnom, as it's described, or as it's named in the Talmud, was basically a really bad neighborhood. in the environs of Jerusalem, there was a neighborhood, or a little valley or a little part of town, where it was like the landfill. It's where trash was burned. It's where unclaimed human remains were dumped. So if you can imagine the worst place on earth, full of burning trash and human bodies and in various states of decay, they were ugh, this is the worst place that we've ever seen. This is the worst place that we can imagine. And so we imagine that the souls of the departed who have to atone for something that they did in their life but didn't atone for are going to wind up in a place like this or something similar. But we can't imagine that they would spend more than 12 months there. Right? That was the time limit on purgatory. 12 months. And so this is actually why when someone's parents pass away, we say Kaddish for 11 months. There's a sort of a mystical thought that when we say Kaddish on behalf of the departed, it's a custom that if it's a first order relative, like first order relatives being mother, father, sister, brother, son, daughter, spouse, right? These sort of first order relatives. These are the people you say Kaddish for when they pass away. For everybody else who aren't your parents, you say Kaddish for 30 days. For your parents, you say Kaddish for 11 months. The idea being that we owe a special honor to our parents, and that when you say Kaddish, you are help ushering their soul through this process of purgatory or Gehinnom. And for our parents, because it's in the Ten Commandments, I believe it's number 5, honor your mother and father, we have a special duty to help their souls along. So we say Kaddish for longer than we say Kaddish for anybody else. We say it for our parents. But we stop at 11 months. Why? Because we want to help them as long as we possibly can, but we don't want to publicly acknowledge that we think our parents are 12-month people. Right? You see, catch my drift? Like if we said Kaddish for 12 months, people would say, man, you must have not really have a high opinion of your mother. You know, if you think she's going to be in Gehinnom for 12 months. And so we say it for as long as we can, but we stop short of the 12-month mark. So that is, what's Gehinah? Gehinah is, I'm going to say, kind of a Yiddishization of Gehinnom from the Talmud, which was essentially just a really terrible neighborhood outside of Jerusalem where they burned trash and dumped bodies. And so when they say the fiery hells of Gehenna, they're talking about this like burning landfill as an imagination of what Jewish purgatory must look like. So it doesn't necessarily come from Christianity. When we say we don't have hell, there are. I was going to say there's no permanent hell in Judaism, but that would contradict what I said earlier about. There is a place in the Talmud where it says, everybody who goes to Gehinnom comes back out again, 12 months max. But there are 3 types of people who stay there forever. And just to satisfy your curiosity, if you are, it's somebody who commits adultery, meaning, messing with somebody else's relationship, somebody who embarrasses another person in public, or somebody who calls another person by a bad nickname. And if you want to learn more about that, hit me up. But that's sort of, again, it's my favorite part of the Talmud. I could talk about it forever, but I won't because we got a Goose game to get to. Rabbi, Daf Yomi question. I know we are to focus on the forest, not the trees. However, in the recent lesson mentioning things like the direction of one's bed, etc., sounds a bit like superstition. You're not wrong. So the rabbis of the Talmud were every bit as suspicious as the people that they were around, and every bit as superstitious, every bit as superstitious as many Jews are today. You know why? Because we're human. They're human. These are humans writing this book. And what's I think curious for a lot of people to realize, even before the direction of the bed thing, I think this was a couple of days ago. They're saying, don't go into ruins alone because you might get attacked by demons. Well, there was 3 things, like you might have a ruin fall on you, you might be enticed to engage the services of a prostitute, or you might get attacked by demons. The rabbis from the Talmud took for granted that demons were real, right? There have been talk in the Daf Yomi about ghosts and about that might be coming up still yet. I was just looking at this passage of like ghosts talking to each other. They believed in ghosts. They believed in demons. They believed in stuff that we think of as superstitious jibber jabber today. They took that stuff for granted. They believed in magic, right? And here's the thing: even if you don't believe in that stuff, you can still read about people believing in that stuff and learn from that. So, position of one's bed. Some of this stuff, they'll say, "Oh, it's from the Torah. You have to put your bed in a certain way." No, there was probably the feng shui of its day that was going around. Everybody knows that if you put your bed in the wrong place, demon's going to take your soul. And so they had those same kind of superstitious and hang-ups that we do today. And it's, for me, it's actually comforting to see sages being humans with the same faults that humans have. They had a lot of wisdom too. But sometimes their reasoning, they put things in the demon box. And demon boxes is a whole different thing. Don't get me started on Dybbuk boxes. We'll talk about that another time. Anthony Edwards says, good afternoon from Boston. Good afternoon, Anthony. Good to see you. Let's see, Tally bag at most shows, people just leave them on a chair, pew table, no one bothers them. But in an airport, yeah, you don't want to be leaving bags around in the airport, for example. So I would feel like if your Tally bag is inside of another bag, you're fine. And I base this decision on a 14th century tshuva on the kashrut of wine that I did my master's thesis on. A seal within a seal is not required, meaning they were talking about, okay, there was a barrel of wine that was on a boat and it was left unsupervised, and they were like, oh, what if, a non-Jew came in and drilled a hole in the barrel and some of the wine came out and he used it for pagan purposes. Isn't it possible that the wine could be not kosher anymore? And the rabbi was like, look, the barrel was a seal, and the barrel was like sandwiched in with a bunch of other barrels. So it was a seal within a seal. It's impossible that wine could have been messed with. And so based on this idea, if you have a seal within a seal, that's like belt and suspenders stuff, as I say, or tucking, as one of my colleagues once said, tucking your shirt into your underwear. It's your shirt's going to stay, but it's completely unnecessary, and you may wind up looking ridiculous. So if you have your tallis bag within another bag, that's my take on it, and you have to take it into the bag because you're going to freak people out about security at the airport, or it's going to be stolen, and if you don't have your tallit, you can't fulfill that mitzvah. Do what you need to do. Let's see, tallit prepare. Oh, got a resource for tallit prepare. Is there a Jewish tailor in Pasadena? So I will ask about fringe repair. I don't know if there's I haven't seen a Jewish tailor in Pasadena. I know when I needed my tallit and my kittel cleaned for the high holidays, the cantor there told me to take it to a particular dry cleaner that she liked. They did a great job on it. Pretty sure they're not Jewish, but they still did a great job on it. Stanley Murray says, are fermented foods kosher? If I ferment chicken, have I moved out of being kosher? I need context on fermentation, please. So I've never seen a source that says fermentation removes things from being kosher. I've also never heard of fermenting chicken. I believe that's a thing. I don't know that I've had fermented chicken. I could just be ignorant about a particular process that you're talking about. The thing is, if the ingredients are kosher, then there's nothing to take it out of the realm of kashrut, right? The way of preparing it doesn't, as long as it's not coming into contact with a dairy product, for example. I mean, if the chicken is kosher and all of the ingredients that it's being processed with or fermented with are also kosher, there's no point at which it becomes not kosher. I wouldn't start the fermentation process on Shabbat, for example, but then it's not. Then it comes out of the realm of kashrut because it's something you can't benefit from something that violates Shabbat. But if you start the whole process, if you put the chicken and the fermentation stuff in a jar and you seal it up before Shabbos, presumably in all my experiments with fermentation, which usually involved home brewing beer, if you start the process before Shabbat, then there's no problem. And fermentation works like cooking. It sort of changes the material nature of the thing. And sometimes it's like ceviche cooks. Like if you have fish, or if I know people use a lot of shellfish in ceviche. I've also had ceviche with no shellfish in it, but it's where fish is cooked by the acid in the lemon juice or lime juice that it's mixed with. So there's lots of different ways of cooking things. Changing its texture, changing its solidity, changing its nature from inedible to edible, for example. So fermentation kind of works like that. When I think about this, I think of fermentation in the same category as cooking, because you're changing it chemically and structurally, and as long as the ingredients that you're cooking together are kosher, then all the things are still kosher. But I just wouldn't start fermenting on Shabbat. That's my opinion on that. So yes, we talk about superstition. Yes, I'm going to just say, yeah, there's lots of superstition. in the Talmud, just like there is among Jews today. To go to Black says, Ezra, I believe the original Jewish afterlife was Sheol. I believe concepts of Gehinnom and Gan Eden were beliefs that came from Babylonian exile and cultural exchange, just my 2 shekels. So, yeah, I mean, we've been, I talked earlier about syncretism, and I said it like it was a bad thing, like where you pick up parts of different religions. As someone pointed out to me recently, or it was in a book that I read, I forget exactly where, every, it was... I think it was the book. I want to say it was the book *Sapiens*. Great book. Yuval, I think, is the author. Wonderful, wonderful book. He talks about syncretism in religion. Basically, every major religion is syncretic to some extent. Christianity picked up a lot of stuff from Judaism. Islam picked up stuff from Judaism and Christianity. Jewish practice today has picked up a lot of ecclesiology from Protestant Christian churches because of the Enlightenment, followed by the Emancipation, followed by the Reform movement emerging from Judaism, picked up a lot, organs and choirs and things like that. So all religions are kind of borrowing from each other. It's entirely possible that, I won't say that Gehinnom came from Christianity. I will say that the idea of hell probably more likely came out of this notion of Gehinnom and then developed into something a little bit later, or they sort of co-rose out of the same set of ideas and beliefs. So, let's see. Makes sense. I find our ambiguity and varying guesses fascinating and enjoyable thing. I thought Gehenna was a more vague and purgatory than hell-like. It is. I'll say it's not like a limbo vague. You know, it's not a nice place. You don't want to wind up there. But according to some people, everybody does. Everybody's got to do their time. But it's over soon. It's afterlife is forever. Gehinnom is max 1 year, which compared to forever isn't that bad. So Black River says, is fermented food kosher? Can I ferment my chicken and still be kosher? I hope I answered that question. Yeah, I think fermentation is like cooking, right? They say if you leave food in salt, like for another example, again, I haven't seen things on fermentation, but I'm just kind of piecing it together from other bits of halakha. You know, it's like if you have a piece of meat and a piece of cheese and you drop them both into the same vessel of water, you take them out, you wash them off, it's fine, that's still meat, that's still cheese, they're okay. If they stay in the same pot of plain water for 24 hours, it's akin to cooking them together, and then they're no longer kosher. So fermentation, but again, if you're not mixing things that you shouldn't be mixing, you're fine. What's the appropriate type of bow for the leader during the barhu? At least how we do it in my shul. The leader of the barhu does the deep knee bend forward bow. Not 3 ways, it's just like barhu et, it's barhu et, and then you're up by the time you say God's name. That's another thing that helps with the bowing stuff. We bow before we say God's name in these certain blessings, but you're always upright by the time you're saying God's name. So the leader will do the dip, the deep knee bend, barhu et, and then up for the 3rd word, which is the name of God. And then everybody else will just say Baruch, name of God, etc. So the leader does the deeper bow. Everybody else who's responding in this call and response does a simple bow at the hip. That's how I learned it. So different people. Let's see. Drake Clark says, what should someone who isn't Jewish not take part in during services? So simply put, you shouldn't lead services. You shouldn't lead blessings. You can pray along with everybody else. That's fine. If someone asks you if you want to lead, let's say you happen to know all the prayers well enough that you could lead the service yourself, but you're not Jewish, don't. But you can respond to the prayers that a Jewish person is leading. A micro example of this is an aliyah. That's the blessings that we say over the Torah reading. Because the person who's coming up to say the blessings before and after the Torah reading are saying those blessings on behalf of the congregation, which is kind of like leading services. I'm trying to sort of keep this simple before getting into the realms of laws of leading prayers and things like that, and what it means to lead prayers that other people respond to. I mean, to simply put, don't lead services. If someone offers you an aliyah and you're not Jewish, don't take it. Just say, you know, you don't necessarily even have to identify yourself. You just say, no, thank you. Thank you, but no thank you. I'm not comfortable doing that. There's lots of Jewish people who aren't comfortable saying that blessing as well, you know, either because they're working on the Hebrew or they may know it, but they just don't like being up in front of people. And so, and the person who's handing out those honors to say those blessings should be respectful of that. So I'll say you can take part in everything in the service. You know, you can touch the Torah scroll. You can, you know, there's no transfer of cooties from a not Jewish person to Jewish things. There are some places that are kind of iffy on non-Jews being on the bima. I see that less and less today. I personally don't believe that there's anything that bad that a not Jewish person does to Jewish space or Jewish things. It's just that when you are representing the Jewish community by leading prayer or saying the blessing over the Torah scrolls, which is like leading prayer of everybody in that moment, you should defer doing those things until you're Jewish. Let's see. And like you can attend services. There's nothing wrong with attending services. For some, there are more and more places in the world. Like America is starting to get a little bit more tight on security because of various recent events. But a lot of places you go, like they don't like strangers coming to shul, and it's not because of you, it's because of security. And so I've heard, you know, my friends who go to Shabbat every single week and maybe even go to daily prayer service and things like that have traveled to other countries, England, France especially, places in South America where you might not be able to find the door to the synagogue because they don't want you to know where it is, or you'll go and there'll be guards with you know, automatic weapons and things like that. And if you just walk in off, you can't just walk in off the street and go to shul. You know, if you want to go, if you're traveling to a country outside of America and you want to visit a synagogue for the purposes of a prayer service, you should give them a call ahead of time and let them know you're coming. You may need to bring your passport with you, or you may need to take a picture of your passport and send it to them during the week. You may need to be on a list, and that's not about Jewish, not Jewish. That's about just heightened situational awareness and security these days in various parts of the world. So let's see. KTC said, rabbis are not famous for answering emails. So Lee Tyrio, I was asking about rabbis answering emails. Yeah, so guilty. I'm bad about answering emails too. That's why I do a live stream, so that I can answer as many questions as possible while I'm on the spot. Because I confess I'm bad at answering emails. There, I said it, and I'm deeply sorry about that. For people who have sent me emails and I haven't responded to you, it's not you, it's me. And I say that with all sincerity, that I get a ton of emails every day. Everybody's question is important to me. It just gets lost in the shuffle. So that's one of the reasons I like to do this live stream, is that we can get together and just talk. Let's see, maybe better to call. I'll say, you know, like if you're able to show up to services and get in a rabbi's face, that's what we love. Like I would, there was one rabbi that I sort of shadowed while I was in school for a little bit. And, you know, he was at a meeting and they said, Rabbi, why don't you come to this event or that event or this other event? And he's like, I tell you what, I do a lot of stuff. Your thing is important. But if people want to see me, if it's just about FaceTime, come to services, right? I'm there every single week. This was him talking. And so I'll say the same thing. Like, if you really want to get a rabbi's attention, go to services. Call the synagogue and say, hey, I'd like to come to services. Is that cool? Are there any security procedures I need to go through? Yes, no, fine. Show up, talk to the rabbi after services. And rabbi, and like, I love it when people want to talk to me after services. I can't stay for like 3 hours, but I'm always there for, like, you know, when people who want to talk to me want to talk to me. So that's a good way to go. Let's see. Stanley Murray says, so I'm not getting out of Gehenna. Just refer to the great wisdom of my youth, the Doors. No one here gets out alive, dude. No, it's like, if there's a Gehenna, this Curtis Mayfield. If there's hell below, we're all going to go. So let's see. Nawa64 says, "Welcome, Lieutenant Light Surge or Lieutenant Surge. I'm not sure. I suggested you curious school. Thank you. Great answer. Thanks, Rabbi." So thank you. So we answered a lot of questions. Wow, we've already been going for almost 90 minutes now, just on questions alone. I'm going to play a little bit of Goose Game, just because I got to earn my Fun Friday cred here, folks. So Black River says, "Hello from Hood River, Oregon." So many great questions today. Sometimes I turn on this live stream. I don't know if it's going to go. I feel like last week we didn't have so many questions. I was trying to figure out Goose Game, which I think was boring for everybody, but I figured out Goose Game, and I had a blast with it. So let's play a little Goose Game for a few minutes, and then I got to ring off for getting ready for Shabbat. So here we go. If you're just joining us, this is the Jew Curious Show. This is where I answer whatever questions you have about Judaism. We've talked about the kashrut of fermented foods today. Never have I have to say, Black River, I have literally never gotten that question before about the kashrut of fermented foods. But I did do, like I said, not to brag, but I did happen to do like my capstone project, my master's thesis, if you will, in rabbinical school on the kashrut of wine, which is a fermented food. And so really appreciate being able to bring that together. So thanks for, like, I don't often get questions that I've never gotten before. So, and I'm not knocking anybody else's question. That's why I always say, if you have a question, ask your question, because chances are somebody else has that question. So by asking the question, you're doing them a real favor, because then then I answer you, but I'm answering everybody here who might also have that question. Lieutenant Surge says, I say LT Surge. I'm going to say Lieutenant Surge. As a recent convert with no real community to learn from, what's a good way to grow and learn about Judaism? That's why somebody's recommending the Jew Curious school. Thank you for that. I mean, it's a place that this sort of came out of, let's say, 5 years on the internet, 5 years of making YouTube videos, just answering basic questions, a few months of putting together a podcast. Just the original Jew Curious show was a podcast. I still have this urge to record a few more episodes to get that out there. I've got a couple of recordings that I've never released, so I want to get that going again soon. But over time, it sort of morphed into, before we became this live show, I wanted to have a place where people who were asking me questions could go and get the answers. And so we, about a little over a year ago, I think, I want to say October 20 something, maybe October 25th of 2018, we started. And it's a place where we have weekly live discussions on the Torah portion of the week. We often have another weekly lesson going on. Right now we're doing a 4-part series on anti-Semitism. And we're doing it sort of over a 4-week chunk of time. Once a week we'll have a different lesson, but all the lessons are recorded. And so by now, after over a year, we have this huge library of over 100 different lessons just in kind of the mini courses, but we also have more than 50 Parshat HaShavua lessons on there as well. So there's like 150 recorded sessions, categorized. There's a whole introduction to Judaism class. There are classes on various holidays. There's classes on things like anti-Semitism, for example, which we're doing right now. So there's all that stuff is in there. You can join us live a couple of times a week, or you can watch the stuff that's out there. My favorite part is the community forum. And so people who are watching these lessons or participating in them live, maybe have questions later, will go on to these sort of this bulletin board and post their questions and talk to each other. I get in there, not often enough, but I get in there when I can to answer what questions people have. And so I think it could be a really good resource for you. And especially, I wanted to make it available online for people in a situation just like yours, where maybe you don't have access to a local rabbi. Maybe you don't have access to a synagogue within 100 miles of you. There's a lot of our students have that situation. And so I've been lucky that I've lived in places where there are lots of Jews, but not everybody's as lucky as me. So, if you don't have access to a community, I fully believe that an online community can give you all just as much support and a feeling of community as offline communities. And they're different, but I've really been delighted to see the community that's emerged from that. So So take that for what it's worth, and thank you for October 22nd, according to the Trivia Lady. Thank you. Come check us out. Just go to jewcurious.school and you'll find out more about that. But for now, let's mess up some people with a goose. So when last we left, I was just learning how to play Goose Game. I didn't really get it. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just driving a goose around, annoying people. But since then, the Goose and I have got up to all sorts of shenanigans. I actually completed the story mode of Untitled Goose Game, but now I have a bunch of various tasks that I'm trying to complete with my goose. And I think my goose is pretending to be a goose statue behind that lady. I'm just going to check what my tasks are. Oh, there I am. Where are my headphones? I gotta put my headphones on. I can't hear my own goose honk. Be right back, guys. All right, now you've seen my backlight, part of my movie magic. Gotta get my air goggles, and I'm ready to go. On the boards is the man they call Mario. Okay, up now I can hear him honk. Can you hear him honk? If you can hear the goose honk, let me know. Let's see, is my microphone on? I think my microphone is on. Video capture device. Oh, you can hear the goose honk there. Turn the goose up a little bit. Okay, let's get to honking with this goose. Well, I can't. I will say that while I'm playing Goose Game, I can't read that. Well, no, I could totally read the multi-chat. Let's see. There's Goose Game. Ambert, Amber B112. This is my first fun Friday. Just interested in learning. Glad to have you here. Dakota Black says glad to have you, Amber B. See, these are nice people. Rabbi, are you familiar with the show Yid Life Crisis on YouTube? I've heard of it. I haven't watched it. It's you know, there's some cultural things that I could probably do a better job of keeping up with. Everybody asks me about Shtisel. Rabbi, have you seen Shtisel? Shtisel's hilarious. I have not seen Shtisel. I have not seen Yid Life Crisis on YouTube. I feel like I live it, so I don't necessarily need to watch it. So let's take a look at what this goose is up to. I have to make someone from out this high street. So this is all the different stuff I've done on Goose Game since in the last week since we last left. I got into the garden. I got the groundskeeper wet. I broke the broom. Trapped the boy in the phone booth. That was interesting. Got on TV. Put things in the basket. Let's see. I made someone break a fancy vase. Bad goose. I made someone prune a prize rose. That was hilarious. Let's see. I got into a pub. I broke a dartboard. I got the toy boat. I made an old man fall on his bum. I'm not, proud of that, but it happened. Let's see. Drop a bucket on the burly man's head. I did that. Got to the model village, stole the beautiful miniature golden bell, and took it all the way back home. I did that. That's how I finished the game. And now it gave me a lot of other stuff to do. I made the groundskeeper. I took the locked the groundskeeper out of the garden. I had a cabbage picnic. I tripped a boy in a puddle. It was not nice. Let's see. Made the shop scales go ding. Make someone from outside the high street buy back their own stuff. So I've got to attract someone from outside of a particular area of the game into that game. So collect the 5 flowers. I feel like where are my flowers? I feel like I did that. Maybe it didn't say. Catch an object as it's thrown over the fence. Get thrown over the fence. Score a goal. All right. Well, as long as I'm in the garden, I'm going to see if I can get thrown over a fence. Try to remember the controls to Goose Game. All right. Break into this guy's house. I'm just going to wait right here. Okay. To get thrown over the fence. So whenever something from this lady's, you know, kind of eclectic garden gets into the newspaper guy's garden, he will throw that back over the fence. And one thing that this lady has in her garden is a goose with a bow around its neck. So I've been here before, so she's already gotten so annoyed that she has made a no goose sign. Speaking of annoying, I'll do this. Goose run. Gonna hide this guy. Put him over here and see. Now I'm pretending to be her goose. See, caution on life crisis, not family rated, sometimes horribly irreverent, vulgar. Let's see. Now I'm pretending to be her ceramic goose. Aha! Now I got dressed up with a ribbon. Now let's see. Have her go about her business. Oh, that's how I'm going to get back over there. And if he thinks I'm the ceramic goose, maybe he'll throw me back over the fence. Nope. Now you're a fancy goose. I am a fancy goose. Thank you for noticing. Feel fancy. You gonna hit me with a stick? Shabbat Shalom, Milo Dwyer. Good to see you. I'm hoping that he'll think I'm a fancy goose statue. Maybe he'll come over here. Don't take my ribbon off. If you take my ribbon off, I'm going to honk you. Arr! Didn't work. If I annoy him sufficiently, he'll throw me over the fence. So I thought if I posed as the fancy goose, he would throw me over the fence. That doesn't seem to be working. Let's see what else is on my list here. Score a goal. Reset to give this a go. Let's see. Catch an object. Let's see, where is the high street? So the high street is a little market where I've actually made people buy back their own stuff before. Where'd he go? I don't know if the high street sells pipes. I do know they sell eyeglasses. Welcome to the new Milo. Good to see you. Nope, I'm a brand new. That's right. We've had Milo here before. You're the new Milo. That's okay. You're your own Milo. You don't need to be new Milo or old Milo. But thank you for welcoming him, Kathy. Let's see. I'm going to take these glasses back to the high street, back to the little market. Let's see, I'll take those glasses. I'm going to hide them over here. Let's see, Milo, I've been following and subscribed for a while. This is the first live stream I've joined. Glad to have you here, Milo Dwyer. I'm gonna break your broom. Try it now, lady. Just go put your glasses back. Well, nah, don't hit the goose with the stick. Let's see, what else do you have? Just gonna fix her broom. Just waiting for her to put those glasses back on the shelf. Let's see. Oh, I didn't know I could crawl under there. That's kind of cool. Oh. Okay. Alright, broom lady. Go put those glasses back. What a shoddy shopkeeper you are. Oh, now she's going to hit me with the broom again. I just want to sit here where I can see her put the glasses back. What kind of business are you running here? Gonna turn the radio back on. Gonna put the adding machine back. Oh, glasses. Where's her broom? Oh, the chalk is out of place. Well, obviously that guy can't get out of his garden, so he can't chase me to the high street. What do we have here? We have tomatoes, apples. I'm just bother this kid. That kid's apparently afraid of geese. It was tragically easy to get him to fall in a puddle. So I'm going to try one maneuver, see if I can get the farmer to chase me onto the high street. Get into the garden. That's easy. Where's the farmer? Take his apple. Where'd he go? Hey, farmer. It's hard to honk with an apple in your mouth. Oh, whoop, 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 whoop. Come on, come on. Come on. Where is he? Where'd he go? Where'd he go? Come on, come on. Come on. No, what do you... Oh. See, the thing is, the goose can't run faster than most people. Did he start all... Gotta keep him interested. Gotta get him to the high street. Nope, 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 nope. Nope. Oh, no, don't catch me. No, serpentine. Come on, lady. He's just stole one of your apples. Oh, kid. Got your apple. Oh, I got in a corner. Got apple cornered. Come on. This is the most slow and awkward moving game. Nope. Nope, farmer, you are staying in the high street until I can convince her that you're a shoplifter. Over here. No, he's the bad guy, lady. He took... Okay. Well, this will be something I work on. I'm glad we had a little fun on Friday. I had fun with all your questions. I'm really glad that we learned together today. So, let's see. Thanks for hanging out. We got some new people here. Lieutenant Surge, haven't seen him here before. We have Milo, who is here. Ezra asked a great question about fermentation and kashrut. You know, like if you find sources and say I'm wrong, I'm happy to have you post those sources for me. But I thrive on the questions that you ask. I learn more as I teach, as I look stuff up, and my students ask me stuff I've never gotten a good kashrut fermentation question before, so thank you for that. It's always my pleasure to learn with you, heroes. We'll be back for next Friday for Fun Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 noon Eastern time. For right now, I got to go run, do some rabbi stuff, get ready for Shabbat. Until next time, heroes, Shabbat Shalom and peace.